The perfect facade character. Nora Chen, the notification sound from my phone cut through the peaceful morning air of our Barcelona hotel room. Another 1,000 followers overnight. I should have felt excited, but lately the numbers felt more like a prison count than a celebration. Rolling over in the luxurious king-sized bed, I watched Tyler scroll through his own Instagram analytics, his face illuminated by the blue glow of his screen. "Look at this," he said, not bothering to glance up. "My post from last night got 47,000 likes. The one with you looking all romantic by the fountain." He finally looked at me, but his eyes held that familiar calculating expression I'd learned to dread. "You should repost it. Your engagement's been dropping lately." I forced a smile, the same practiced expression I'd perfected over the past 2 years of our relationship. "Maybe later. I thought we could just enjoy breakfast together without documenting everything." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Tyler's jaw tightened, and he set his phone down with deliberate precision. "Without documenting everything? Nora, do you understand that this trip is content? Our entire brand is built on sharing our life together. People look up to us." Brand. That word always made my stomach twist. When had our relationship become a brand? When had our private moments become products to be packaged and sold to strangers on the internet? "I know, but nothing." He stood up, running his hands through his perfectly styled hair. Even first thing in the morning, Tyler looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. It was one of the things that had initially attracted me to him. That effortless perfection. Now it felt suffocating. "I've invested too much in us, in this image, for you to start getting lazy about content creation." Invested. Another word that made our love feel transactional. I pulled the hotel bathrobe tighter around myself and walked to the window overlooking the beautiful Barcelona skyline. The city stretched out below us, full of authentic life and real moments that didn't need to be filtered or captioned or hashtagged to have meaning. "Remember why we're here?" Tyler continued, his voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. "This isn't just a vacation. We got these hotel upgrades, the free meals, the VIP experiences because of our influence, because brands want to work with us, but only if we deliver content that maintains our image. Our image. The happy couple, the relationship goals, the perfect partnership that made our followers comment things like, 'I wish I could find love like this,' and 'You two are everything I aspire to be.' If only they knew that most of our curated perfection was shot after Tyler had spent 20 minutes critiquing my appearance, or that our romantic dinner posts were usually followed by silent, tense meals where he scrolled through comments instead of talking to me. Tyler, I love sharing our adventures, but sometimes I feel like we're performing our relationship instead of living it." The words hung in the air between us, and I immediately regretted my honesty. Tyler's expression shifted, from annoyance to something darker. He had a way of making me feel ungrateful for voicing any dissatisfaction with our picture-perfect life. "Performing?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Nora, everything we have is because of this performance. The sponsorship deals, the free trips, the apartment we can barely afford on your blogger income alone. Without our content, without our image, what are you? Just another girl with a camera and opinions nobody cares about." The cruelty of his words hit me like a physical blow. This was the Tyler that our followers never saw, the one who emerged whenever I stepped out of line or questioned the carefully constructed narrative of our perfect relationship. The Tyler who could make me feel small and worthless with surgical precision. I turned back to the window, blinking away tears I refused to let him see. Below us, Barcelona hummed with authentic life. Couples holding hands without photographing it, families laughing without performing it, people simply existing without monetizing every moment. "Get dressed," Tyler said, his voice now businesslike. "We have the Sagrada Familia shoot at 10, and then that rooftop lunch. Wear the blue dress, It tests better with our audience demographics. As I heard him start the shower, I caught my reflection in the window glass. The woman looking back at me seemed like a stranger, carefully curated and hollow-eyed. When had I stopped recognizing myself? When had pleasing Tyler and maintaining our image become more important than my own happiness? I picked up my phone and scrolled through our recent posts. Every photo was perfect, every caption crafted to inspire envy and engagement. But behind each smile, I could now see the arguments, the criticisms, the gradual erosion of my sense of self. Our relationship had become a beautiful lie, and I was complicit in telling it. The shower stopped, and I knew I had minutes before Tyler emerged with his agenda for the day, his shot lists and optimal lighting requirements. Minutes before I put on the blue dress and the practiced smile and played my part in the performance that had consumed my life. But something was shifting inside me, a growing awareness that I couldn't ignore much longer. The perfect facade was starting to crack, and for the first time in months, I wasn't sure I wanted to repair it. Retry UB Part 2 to 5 edit. Cracks in the foundation. Character, Detective Marcus Rivera. The call came in at 2:47 p.m. on what had been a relatively quiet Tuesday at Barcelona El Prat Airport. Domestic disturbance at Gate B12, dispatch crackled through my radio. Male suspect. Became aggressive with female companion. Multiple witnesses. I'd been working airport security for 8 years, and I'd seen every kind of traveler meltdown imaginable. Missed connections, lost luggage, delayed flights, they all had a way of bringing out the worst in people. But something about this call felt different as I made my way through the terminal. The crowd around Gate B12 had that particular energy of people who'd witnessed something shocking. Passengers were clustered in small groups, speaking in hushed tones, some still holding their phones like they'd been recording. A few children were crying, clinging to their parents' legs. "What happened here?" I asked Maria Santos, one of the gate agents who'd called it in. "The couple over there?" She nodded toward where my colleague, Officer Chen, was speaking with a young woman in a blue dress. Even from a distance, I could see she was shaking. They were arguing about the delay, and it escalated quickly. "The man! He hit her! Right here in front of everyone!" I've seen enough domestic violence cases to know the signs, but public incidents were rarer. Most abusers are careful about their image, especially in crowded spaces. This suggested either a complete loss of control or someone so confident in their power that they didn't think there would be consequences. "Where's the male suspect now?" Security detained him near the customer service desk. He's been demanding to speak to a manager, claiming this is all a misunderstanding. Maria's expression was grim. "Marcus, I've been working here for 15 years. I've never seen someone hit their partner and then immediately start worrying about their social media reputation." That detail caught my attention. I walked over to where the woman sat, noting how she held herself, arms wrapped protectively around her torso, eyes darting toward the exits like she was planning an escape route. "Miss, I'm Detective Rivera. I understand you've had a difficult experience. Can you tell me what happened?" She looked up at me with eyes that held a mixture of fear, shame, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Relief, maybe? "My name is Nora Chen. We were traveling together, Tyler and I. He was upset about the flight delay, and when I tried to calm him down," she touched her cheek gingerly. "He's never done that before. Not in public." The phrase, "not in public," sent up red flags. In my experience, first-time offenders rarely hit their partners in front of hundreds of strangers. This suggested a pattern of private abuse that had finally spilled into public view. "Nora, I need to ask, has Tyler ever been physical with you before today?" She hesitated, and in that pause, I saw the internal struggle of someone who'd been conditioned to protect her abuser. Not like that. But he has these moments when he gets angry. He'll grab my arm too tightly, or push me when I'm not moving fast enough for him, but he always apologizes after. Classic escalation pattern. I'd seen it countless times. The gradual normalization of increasingly aggressive behavior until something like this happened. What made this case unusual was the very public nature of the final incident. Nora. Several passengers recorded what happened. Are you comfortable with us reviewing that footage as part of our investigation? For the first time since I'd approached her, she looked directly at me. People recorded it? Yes. And from what I understand, you're Tyler? He's somewhat of a public figure? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. He has 500,000 Instagram followers. We both do lifestyle content. Our whole relationship is public, but this, she gestured to her reddened cheek. This wasn't supposed to be part of the brand. I was beginning to understand the broader implications of this case. In the social media age, public figures who built their reputation on relationship content faced unique consequences when their private dysfunction became public knowledge. My radio crackled again. Rivera, the suspect is asking for his phone. Says he needs to do damage control on his social accounts. Even now, his primary concern was managing his image rather than the harm he'd caused his partner. It was a level of narcissism that, in my experience, often indicated deeper psychological issues. Nora, I want you to know that you have options here. We can pursue criminal charges, and there are resources available to help you process what happened and plan your next steps. She nodded slowly. I keep thinking about all the people who saw, all the phones that were recording. For 2 years, I've been so careful about our image, about making sure everything looked perfect online. And now the truth is out. I finished for her. Yes. She took a deep breath, and I watched her straighten her shoulders slightly. Detective Rivera, I want to press charges, and I want to see those videos. I think I need to understand how this looked to everyone else, because I've been making excuses for his behavior for so long that I'm not sure I can trust my own perception anymore. That was the moment I knew Nora was going to be okay. After years of working these cases, I'd learned to recognize the difference between victims who were ready to break free and those who weren't. Nora had just crossed that line. As I walked her through the next steps, I found myself thinking about the dozens of people who'd witnessed Tyler's assault. In the old days, a moment like this might have been seen by a handful of strangers and quickly forgotten. But now, in our connected world, Tyler's true nature was likely already spreading across social media platforms. Sometimes technology revealed more than just the perfect moments people chose to share. Sometimes it captured the truth behind the facade, and there was no filter in the world that could hide that. The viral truth. Character. Jamie Walshai was editing travel photos in the airport lounge when the commotion started at gate B12. At first, I thought it was just another delayed flight situation. Angry passengers, frazzled staff, the usual chaos. But when I heard the sharp sound of skin hitting skin, followed by gasps from the crowd, I knew this was different. My journalism instincts kicked in immediately. After 5 years covering human interest stories for various online publications, I'd developed a sixth sense for when something newsworthy was happening. I pulled out my phone and started recording, more out of habit than any conscious decision to document what was unfolding. The man doing the shouting was clearly some kind of influencer. Everything about him screamed social media personality. The perfect hair, the expensive casual wear, the way he carried himself like someone accustomed to being photographed. When he struck the young woman beside him, the contrast was jarring. This polished, camera-ready person had just committed an act of violence in front of hundreds of witnesses. But it was the woman's reaction that broke my heart. She didn't scream or fight back. She just stood there, touching her cheek with a look of resigned devastation that suggested this wasn't entirely unexpected. That expression told a story I'd seen too many times in my work. the face of someone who'd been slowly worn down by emotional abuse until physical violence felt like a natural progression. I kept recording as security approached, as the crowd dispersed, as the man, Tyler, I heard someone say, immediately shifted into damage control mode. Even as officers were asking him questions, he was asking about his phone, about social media, about managing the situation. Not once did I hear him express genuine concern for the woman he'd just assaulted. Back at my hotel that night, I stared at the footage on my laptop screen. It was clear, well lit, and devastating. You could see everything. Tyler's escalating agitation, the moment he lost control, the sound of the slap, Nora's stunned reaction, and most tellingly, his immediate concern about being recorded rather than remorse for his actions. I'd researched them both online. Tyler Morrison, lifestyle influencer and motivational speaker with 547,000 Instagram followers. Nora Chen, travel and lifestyle blogger with 312,000 followers. Their joint content painted them as the perfect couple. Relationship goals as, the kids say. But the man in my video bore no resemblance to the charming boyfriend in their carefully curated posts. This was the dilemma keeping me awake. I had footage that could expose an abuser, potentially saving other women from experiencing what Nora had endured. But sharing it would also thrust a domestic violence victim into an unwanted spotlight, turning her trauma into viral content. I'd covered enough social media scandals to know how this would play out. The video would spread across platforms within hours. Tyler's career would implode, but Nora would face intense scrutiny, victim blaming, and invasive questions about why she'd stayed with him. The very exposure that could protect future victims might re-traumatize the current one. My phone buzzed with a text from my editor at Digital Truth. Heard there was some drama at Barcelona airport today involving influencers. Got anything? The journalism world was small, and stories like this traveled fast through industry networks. If I didn't publish the video, someone else would likely obtain similar footage from other witnesses. At least I could control the narrative, frame it properly, provide context about domestic violence patterns. I spent the next morning researching Nora's content more thoroughly. Her recent posts showed subtle changes, fewer genuine smiles, more forced-looking couple photos, captions that seemed increasingly focused on Tyler's achievements rather than her own adventures. The signs were there if you knew how to look for them, but it was a video from 3 months ago that made my decision, for me. Nora was doing a Q&A session, answering follower questions about relationships and travel. Someone had asked about dealing with difficult partners while traveling, and her response was telling, "You know, I think the most important thing is compromise and understanding that travel stress affects everyone differently. Sometimes your partner might react in ways that seem extreme, but it's usually coming from a place of anxiety or feeling overwhelmed. The key is communication and knowing when to give each other space." She was essentially giving advice to other women on how to manage abusive partners, normalizing emotional volatility as travel stress. How many of her followers might be in similar situations, taking her advice to heart, making excuses for their own partner's behavior? That settled it. I opened my laptop and began writing. The article went live at 6 p.m. Eastern Time with the headline, "Behind the Instagram Perfect Relationship, When Influencer Culture Masks Domestic Violence." I embedded the airport footage alongside screenshots from their social media accounts, contrasting their public image with the private reality. But I didn't just focus on Tyler's actions. I wrote about the broader implications, how social media culture pressures people to maintain perfect relationships publicly, how financial dependence on couple-based content can trap victims, how influencer culture's emphasis on image management can enable abusers. Within 2 hours, the article had been shared 15,000 times. The video was spreading across TikTok, Twitter, Instagram stories. Tyler Morrison began trending, but so did DIY's support Nora and DIY's influencer abuse. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of women shared their own stories in the comments. Followers of Tyler and Nora who'd admired their relationship, women who'd been in similar situations, people who'd recognized warning signs in the couple's content that they'd dismissed at the time. But the message that affected me most came at midnight, from an Instagram account I didn't recognize. Thank you for sharing my story with the context it deserved. For 2 years, I've been living in a carefully constructed prison, afraid to speak out because our livelihood depended on maintaining the facade. Seeing the truth finally exposed, seeing the support from strangers, it's given me courage I didn't know I had left. Anne. I didn't need her to sign her full name to know who'd sent it. Sometimes journalism isn't just about reporting the truth. It's about creating space for that truth to be heard, believed, and acted upon. In a world where image is everything, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is show reality without filters. The video would continue to spread. The story would evolve, but for one woman, the performance was finally over, and that made every difficult decision about publishing it worth it. Part 4. The Aftermath. Character: Dr. Rebecca Torres. The young woman sitting across from me in my office bore little resemblance to the polished influencer I'd seen in the viral video 3 weeks ago. Nora Chen had contacted me after finding my name on a domestic violence resource website, specifically looking for a therapist who understood the unique challenges faced by people in the public eye. "I keep wondering if I'm making too big a deal of this," she said, unconsciously touching the spot on her cheek where Tyler had hit her. "Everyone keeps calling me brave, but I don't feel brave. I feel like a fraud." This was the paradox I encountered frequently in my practice. Victims of emotional abuse often struggled to validate their own experiences, especially when the abuse had been primarily psychological rather than physical. The airport incident had been Tyler's first public display of violence, but as Nora described their relationship, it became clear that the emotional groundwork had been laid long before. "Tell me about the fraud feeling," I said, settling back in my chair. "Where do you think that's coming from?" For 2 years, I posted about our perfect relationship. I gave other women relationship advice based on what I thought Tyler and I had together. But I was living a lie, and now those same women are looking at me like I'm some kind of hero for leaving him. She laughed bitterly. "I didn't choose to leave him, Rebecca. I left because he humiliated himself in public, and I finally saw him clearly. If he hadn't hit me in front of all those people, I might still be there, making excuses, telling myself it was normal." This self-blame was typical of abuse survivors, particularly those who'd been subjected to gaslighting over extended periods. Tyler had systematically undermined Nora's confidence in her own perceptions, making her doubt her instincts and reality. "Nora, can you think of a time in your relationship when you felt genuinely happy? Not performing happiness for the camera, but actually content?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the Barcelona street below. We'd been meeting twice a week since she'd decided to stay in the city rather than return to the apartment she'd shared with Tyler. The very beginning, maybe. The first few months when everything felt new and exciting. But looking back, she frowned. Even then, he was controlling things. I just mistook his possessiveness for passion, his need to manage our image for ambition. The red flags were there, but they were painted to look like green lights. That was perhaps the most insightful thing she'd said in our session so far. The ability to recognize that her perception had been deliberately manipulated was crucial to her healing process. "What's been the hardest part of these past few weeks?" I asked.